And so I would say that's the biggest struggle in my life. That moment, that was the dark night of the soul for me. But it was also the most beautiful moment because
Awekenge, this is Mental Matters, hosted by Asego Toto.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Mental Matters. I'm your host, Asego Toto. And before we dive into today's incredible conversation, I have a small favor to ask. If you enjoy what you hear today, please take a moment to rate and review our podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen. Your feedback not only helps us improve, but also helps others discover the valuable insights we share every week. And if you find today's episode particularly inspiring or insightful, don't forget to share it with your friends, family, or anyone you think could benefit from it. Thank you for your support. It truly means the world to us. Now, let's get back into our conversation.
As I've said, I've mentioned the counter-intuitive approach. Could you elaborate on what makes it different from conventional methods for managing anxiety and panic attacks?
Yeah, so most people treat anxiety with mental solutions because it makes sense. When we have anxiety, we're in our head, where we have fear, we have dread, we spiral mentally. So I thought the solution was mental. I thought meditation would help. I thought maybe supplements would help with the brain. I thought maybe, talk therapy would help. But in reality, when I realized the actual root of anxiety, of panic, is an emotional issue. It's deeply suppressed emotions in our body. Once you realize it's an emotional issue, then you treat it differently. Then you approach it completely differently, because all these mental techniques sort of manage it and maintain it, meaning it just keeps coming back. You got to do all these rituals and things, but then it comes back tomorrow, and then it comes back the next day, it comes back next week. I wanted it gone forever. I didn't want to manage it and maintain it and take medications and all this stuff. I wanted to get to the actual root. So counterintuitive solution is, this is not a mental issue. Mostly, this is a mostly emotional issue.
So, what are the core principles that underpin your approach, and how do they differ from traditional methods like therapy, medication, or meditation, as you said?
Yeah. So the first thing is, you have to fully regulate your nervous system. If you have anxiety, it means your nervous system is tense. It means your nervous system is not functioning properly, and it's always switched on, right? You're always on the go, go, go. You're always busy in your mind. You're always trying to figure and do something out. And that completely zaps you, right? There's so much tension in your body. That tension is actually holding in all of the suppressed emotion. So, the first thing is to have a completely relaxed, fully regulated nervous system. And I teach people how to do that. Okay. The second thing is learn how to unhook from negative emotions. Okay. While any negative emotion is happening, because at the root of anxiety is negative emotions. Like, it could be anger, it could be fear, it could be sadness, it could be paralysis. All of these negative feelings are underneath the anxiety. It's why we go up into our head and spiral. Okay. So any single time you're in a negative emotion, you have to unhook. You have to process it out fully, because when you process out these suppressed emotions, they're gone forever. They don't come back. They're released for good. So someone with anxiety, they avoid that feeling. They scroll on their phone, or they listen to a meditation, or they go for a walk, or they try to work out to escape that feeling. That's the worst thing you can do for anxiety. You have to lean into that feeling and unhook from it. So I teach people how to do that on their own. And then the third thing I teach it's called catalyst integration. And what this is we all have boulders of resistance of suppressed emotions inside of us in our nervous system. All of us from the past. These are moments that haunt us from our past. These are people that really scarred us, internally. And not to blame anyone, but we all have this. So catalyst integration is a process to how do we release these boulders for good? How do we release this from our being so that it doesn't flare up and cause the anxiety and the heart palpitations and the dread and the paralysis anymore? How do we release these boulders for good? So these 3 steps, fully regulated nervous system, unhooking from negative emotions, and catalyst integration, can all be learned on your own. You don't need a therapist. You don't need someone to talk and dig in your mind for the root cause, because the root cause is in your nervous system. You can do all of this on your own without questioning and ruminating. And actually, the reason that talk therapy can be harmful for some people is because these questions lead you to your past. These questions ask you what you're worried about. And by worrying more and asking these questions about what's wrong, you strengthen those neural pathways that are actually causing and keeping you in anxiety. So it's a completely different approach that goes to the root.
And I would like to know that when did you come across this counterintuitive approach?
Yeah, I came up with it because I went through everything that didn't work first, right? So this was years of meditation, focusing on your breath, guided meditations, trying to get out of it. This is years of supplements and searching all that stuff, years of exercise and trying that stuff. So I had to learn what didn't work first. And the medications weren't working. The medications would just kind of numb you and calm you, which it bypassed all that energy. So once I learned that we have, and I read this in Emotion Code, I learned this from Michael Singer, we have trapped emotions in our body from our past. Everything we've ever pushed away that we couldn't handle is in our body. And I said, okay, I want that out. How do we get that out? And so that led me on a journey of practicing this every day to learn how to release this stuff, right? Because it's very counterintuitive. Most of us don't want to feel this way. And mentally, we're like, I can't feel this way. I don't want to feel anxiety. We escape it. So I had to completely say, okay, I have anxiety because I'm doing this wrong. I admitted I have anxiety because I'm not doing this correctly. I'm not processing correctly. So I have to do the exact opposite of what I've been conditioned to do. And that was very hard at first. So it was through my own trial and error that I figured out how to relax into this, how to release this, how to regulate, and all of these things. So it was a process that took me quite some time. But once I figured it out, I was able to teach people a much quicker way within a few weeks.
And in terms of, as you mentioned, the strategies that you teach people, and when I was going through your website, I saw it highlights a lot of testimonies from individuals who have experienced significant improvement in their lives after working with you, definitely. What are the most common transformations you witness in your clients?
Yeah, that's a really good question because I've helped people with suicidal thoughts release those. I've helped people in severe depressions. All of a sudden, they're no longer depressed. And so the most common transformation is people realize that they are the ones holding on to their resistance. And that liberates them because now they have a tool on their own that they can practice, that they can release this stuff. And here's the thing is, not only does this release people of years of depression or suicidal thoughts or anxiety, right? Like it did for me and others, but mental blocks and subconscious blocks are released and transformed for most people. You don't need a coach to help you up-level your life because all of the transformative energy that you need, the clarity you need is in that suppressed energy. So what happens is people face this suppressed emotion, which is uncomfortable. By processing it out, releasing it, all of a sudden they gain clarity in their lives of the patterns that they're repeating, of the ways that they're stuck. not through me teaching them, not through someone telling them, because you can hear something over and over and over in your mind and not do it. When they feel this stuff fully, now all of a sudden they take more expanded action in their business. They're not afraid anymore. They move through relationships better. They realize why they're stuck in money, or they're stuck in business, or they're stuck in, their personal relationship. And that's the most powerful thing, is you don't need a mindset coach. You simply feel all the stuff inside of you that's suppressed, that's a part of you, release it, and the heaviness goes away, the dread goes away, all of this mental rumination goes away, and you start advancing in your life and expanding. So it's not just about releasing the past, it's about expanding into your now.
Mm-hmm. And and I feel like another thing that we as individuals find it hard to do, it's letting go of things. For example, I had a conversation whereas I spoke about men's health, whereas we spoke about how men are so expected to not cry in terms of crying, in terms of showing emotions. So as you've said, that anxiety, it's something that it's an emotional issue. So in terms of that, when it comes to crying, would you say that men, would you advise them to cry? Because as I've said, is seen as a taboo for a man to cry.
Yeah, you're very right. As men, we've been taught to hold all that stuff in, to bury it, to control our emotions, right?
Yeah.
At some point you realize as a man that you have a lot of stuff inside of you that's causing all this mental, emotional anguish and suffering. So you have two choices, right? You can continue to bury it, avoid it, ignore it, fight it, and continue on reacting and doing things the same way. You can do that, right? You can maintain and manage and the way you've been doing things. Or you can take the other route. Because there's really only two options here. You can suppress everything and not feel it, or you can feel it knowing that it will release for good, and you'll be much healthier internally for it. And so if you're going the path that I'm talking about, yes, you will be crying, right? There's some stuff inside of you that needs a release. Part of the release, one way to release this stuff is to cry it out. Like, you will feel like crying. Stop holding that in. Right? It doesn't mean you have to go in public in a grocery store and just melt down, right? It means like you can do this on your own in the comfort of your own. Like, no one needs to see you. That's okay. But whatever you need to relax and feel, let it happen. Because the reason we're having so much internal problems and struggles is because we're not letting it happen. We're resisting it. That resistance is causing all of this friction inside of us and tension and issues. So yes, you're right. As a man, specifically, we have to accept there's all this stuff inside of us that we take responsibility. We have put in there, we have trapped in there, consciously or unconsciously. So crying will be a part of that healing process. Absolutely.
I would like to move on to explain your journey, and we cannot sit here and talk about chronic anxiety and panic attacks without mentioning your story. You have achieved remarkable success as a memory champion, 3 times champion memory and entrepreneur. How did your struggles with anxiety and panic attacks impact your personal and professional life?
Yeah. A lot of people didn't know I struggled with anxiety on the way to the top of being a memory champion. I actually had a panic attack in 2019 at the World Memory Championships in China. Like the first event, first day, I was expected in my mind to finish in the top 5 or the top 10 of the world. And the first event was one of my specialties. I got the page, I turned it around, and all the images on the page were printed blurry, which sent me into an internal struggle. Let's put it lightly. The demons came out of my mind. I was so frustrated, so angry, and I kept pressing, and I had a panic attack. Like, I couldn't focus, and that derailed me in that first event. And then most people don't know that. But I also noticed too, a lot of times when I would train, I would have brain fog. And I always thought the brain fog, I needed a